Hi, it's Ian here from Studio TV. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be chatting with Brett Webster from the Enquire Learning Trust, who have a good number of schools, academies within the trust, and we're going to be chatting a little bit about how the trust launched 30 websites across the trust. Brett, thank you so much for joining me today. It's really good to see you.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So we've known each other a little while, obviously having worked together on some stuff within some of the individual schools within your trust, but then obviously more broadly than that as well. I think it'd just be really good to get an idea of your role within the trust and what the picture of the trust actually looks like. That'd just be really helpful to certainly to kick us off with, if you're happy with that.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Cool.
So I'm the Director of IT for Enquire Learning Trust. So at the moment, the central team, if you like, is myself in terms of IT. What we look to do as a trust is to kind of work with partners, providers, rather than kind of expanding the central team itself. So from my perspective, whilst I kind of oversee all the IT that goes on in school, from the procurement of the kit to the managed service, if you like. So what infrastructure our schools have, to all the systems that they use and the uniformity, and Shudi obviously being our website choice. Like I said, that's kind of all my remit, and just making sure that the relevant kits and systems are in place for us to work well and to work to the quality that we want to work at as well. Like I said at the outset, that's kind of my role. We have 29 academies at present, all of which are primary schools. So we are based across three geographical regions. So over in the west, in Tameside, Manchester, we've got 9 schools. We've got further 9 schools up in our northern hub, which stretches from Stockton-on-Tees out to Whitby, and schools in between as well, from in Middlesbrough, Great Ayton, Stokesley. So that's a real big spread actually in terms of the distance between those schools. And then our last hub, the Eastern hub, we've got 11 schools there, which are in Cleethorpes, Grimsby, and Hull. So a real mixture in terms of where they are, the locality, but in terms of the consistency of what they want, what they need, with us being primary throughout, it makes things a little bit easier to share that knowledge and kind of implement things for one and push that across the board, which is exactly the route that we chose to go to with the websites.
Yeah, cool. That makes a lot of sense. From your point of view, that's a bit of travelling, isn't it? Sometimes.
Indeed, yeah, it's a few miles on the car, that is for sure.
Yeah, gosh, that covers a lot of stuff. I mean, that's really helpful, certainly to get us started with. That's brilliant. And there's actually a comment just come on here. Just let's have a look at that. So, Inspire Futures Through Learning have asked if we're going to chat a little bit about how to make the trust website itself a little bit better. We'll try and cover a little bit of that when we get to it. That's something we can certainly look at. I think what it'd be really helpful for us to start off with, obviously we work together on launching sites across the trust. Why does somebody in your position or somebody in a trust get to the point where they're thinking, do you know what, we need a single person or a single organization to help us do website stuff across the trust?
Yeah, so I mean, from our perspective, we grew really quickly. Actually, from when I started in 2014, we had a handful of schools, and then within 3 years, we grew to 29.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
It is indeed. And our ethos at the start really was around, for my role in particular, was around supporting the schools with what they had already and getting the most out of that. But then that really quickly changed in terms of the numbers that we had, the size of the business, if you like, that we realised that actually the inconsistencies from one school to the next, the kind of the look and feel, the corporateness or the lack of corporateness, was just something that we needed to rectify really and prioritise. So certainly in terms of the website piece of work that we looked at, the biggest thing really from our perspective was like I said, the corporate feel, the look of it, the professionalism, and the quality above everything. We had a specific remit, which obviously Ian's aware of, that we wanted a bespoke design, a bespoke product, if you like. We wanted consistency across all 29 schools in terms of the look and feel, but we had a bit of a caveat, if you like, that we still wanted those schools to have their own local identity within their communities. School colours, school branding, things like that, which when you look at our websites, I think we've captured that really well.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I feel really strongly about that, actually. I know that some folk, it goes, depending on, we work with a number of trusts, and it goes different ways depending on what the approach is. And some people will go, look, actually, we just leave the schools themselves to make their own decisions across the board on stuff, and there'll be things from a financial point of view that we might want to bring in line with each other, but actually we just want to let people do their own thing because we don't want to get too heavy-handed, for want of a better word. But actually people go the other way as well, don't they, where they have something that is so corporate that you strip out the identity of the school. And I think one of the reasons that for me, we really enjoyed the project and wanted to have this conversation with you specifically, Brett, was because I thought you got that balance really good. So you said, actually, we do want something that is corporate and reflects the values across the trust, but isn't really tight, isn't really tight. We still want those schools to have their own identity. And obviously grateful that you're saying that, hooray, we did it pretty well. But that's really cool from our point of view, because schools have their own identity, don't they?
They do indeed, yeah. And that when we implement anything on scale across all our schools, we consult with our principals and relevant working parties to make sure that obviously what we're looking at implementing works for them as well. It's never just a trust decision solely or on a whim. So obviously when we went down this route, we got some mock designs, worked with Studio, and obviously put them out to the schools, and it was a unanimous positive reaction to it, really. And I suppose with anything, you're a little bit cautious in terms of how will people take to it, how will they kind of embrace it, if you like, especially when at the outset we were talking about the uniformity and the corporateness, and some schools kind of immediately, you might feel that, well, no, we don't want it to be that. We want it to be kind of family friendly, or kind of just be our little bubble, if you like. So it was a fine line that we had to tread, but like I said, I think we got that right, and we were able to kind of lock down, if you like, certain aspects of it. So we've got a single menu structure that makes it easier for us to know where all the Ofsted related information needs to go, and all the key information, if you like. But in and around that, then the schools have still got their kind of they can still go off on a tangent, if you like, and have their own things in there, what makes it really specific to them.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's maybe answers that question a little bit, isn't it? Yeah, about how you can make the trust website itself better. Although that we'll maybe come back to that, because I might just be talking specifically about the trust rather than the schools in the trust. But that uniformity of structure does help from a management point of view, doesn't it? How did you overcome, if there were really any issues around, because it pops up quite a bit, this idea of design by committee, and what the and people, like you say, it's quite precious to people, in terms of their identity. It's their main public facing identity as a school. How did you approach that with the individual schools and managing that relationship?
It was pretty straightforward, in all honesty. We like I said, we tend to hold half-termly consultation events where we invite the schools to kind of discuss our hot topics, if you like. So we introduced it really early. We laid all the options out there. We've done a full procurement exercise, if you like, in terms of what the different options were, what the look and feels of each provider would look like. And when we posted it to the schools, if you like, and posed the different options, those it were unanimous. In all honesty, we had 29 schools in the room, and unanimous is probably a push, but we had 29 schools in the room, and I would say that well over 20 were. Let's just go for Shudio. It does everything that we thought about. It's covered everything that we've asked it to. Because when we obviously went out for this procurement exercise, we spoke with different providers, and we gave each of them the same remit. This is what we're looking for. This is how we want it to tie together, and we got mock-ups from all of them, and it were those which we used to consult with our school. But yeah, in my eyes, I felt it was going to be something that was going to be really contentious and maybe kind of blow up in our face a little bit in terms of I don't want that, I want this, I want that. But like I said, the feedback was really positive from the get-go, and it snowballed from them really.
It's really good, isn't it? And there's clearly something that you've fostered this community where that relationship's quite open and a safe place to have those kind of conversations, and people obviously trust you, within the trust we're making decent decisions on that, which is amazing, isn't it? Just to flip it slightly, because we've talked a little bit about that kind of the front end of stuff and how everything looks. From a back end point of view and a technical side of stuff, what are some of the things that were and are really important to you as a trust that kind of need covering off?
Yeah, so I mean, from our perspective, we like I said right at the outset, there's only myself in the central team charged with kind of IT or IT support or anything like that. So we need to make sure that actually people in the school, people on the ground, are the ones who can update and amend their website and continually improve and add the content. So one of the things when we looked at the procurement exercise, it was around the ease of use. It was around how they can transform it from one term to the next, and not have it static and not have it stagnant, and just continually evolve and develop it. So we worked with yourself and Shudio and China and some of the other teams around making sure we put on the relevant training as well. I think that was really key. With other providers, when we looked at moving our schools away from them, one of the feedback points was around, will we get training? We've not really had training from this provider, so we only know how to do X, Y, and Z. So one of the key things, like I said, was ensuring that we had a rigorous training plan as well, and we got the right people involved at the right time.
Yeah. No, it's really important, isn't it? It's really important. I'm just thinking then when you're talking about the training side of it, and obviously we are, if anybody watches this back afterwards, we're doing this whenever schools are still closed because of some pandemic or something. We're kind of relieved actually that we'd got Scudio TV live by this point, because what that means is all the training's online and on demand, and as many people within all the schools within the trust can actually access that training. So that's been something that we found, we know has been really helpful across the board. So we've kind of been grateful that we managed to get that done before things blew up. If you were having a conversation with somebody from a trust, and again, we might get more questions pop up, but we're having a conversation with somebody from a trust who was looking to explore this kind of stuff as an option. What advice could you give them? Any kind of tips of how you might approach the whole thing?
I suppose the biggest one is don't be scared to do it. Like I said and alluded to, there's all sorts that kind of run through your head in terms of kind of what the feedback will be from the schools, how they will take to it. Schools kind of treat what they've got already as kind of their babies, if you like, and we've had this for so long, we love how it works, and sometimes there just needs to be that kind of that eye-opening experience, if you like, in terms of we know that it does that, but we can make it do all this as well. So certainly in terms of kind of the school's thoughts being the biggest barrier, don't let that hold you back, and at least have that conversation with them. Like I said, everybody will have different ways around kind of implementing such a project, but we found that it was key to involve the key stakeholders from the get-go. One of the biggest things that I'm sure not just schools but people in everyday life is they want to be able to be involved in a decision-making process. They don't want to be told this is happening and get on with it as such. So yeah, like I said, the biggest thing for us was just involving them and just having a clear plan. We outlined that from the start. We said the dates that we would be looking at doing things. We made sure that we had the content and existing access to the websites kind of transferred across, ready for these dates. And we just had clear timelines in place. And whilst we probably rushed the timelines, time scales, certainly from Studio's eyes, in terms of we've got 3 or 4 weeks here to do 30 websites. I'm sure we could maybe think about that a little bit wiser in future, certainly from my perspective. But in terms of the work that Studio did in getting us there, it certainly paid off in the end.
Yeah, we really enjoyed the project, actually, and I think certainly at the time, it's the biggest project we've done in terms of numbers, and it obviously took a while to get to that point. And there was things like content transfer and all that kind of stuff where it's like went backwards and forwards a little bit, and we covered off domains and all sorts of stuff, didn't we? So there was tons of stuff in it, and you were patient. Thank you for certain bits of that. So I think, the relationship's got to be really good, hasn't it? I think if I'm remembering right, certainly what you did allow to happen, which going back even further than the kind of trust-wide project, you had a number of providers working across the trust kind of organically, didn't you? So we were already working with certainly a handful of the schools within the trust, and it was those people that were working within with those schools already that you approached, and that's a really cool idea, obviously, because you've got some level of trust there with everybody you're working with. You've got an idea from all of your schools about what people are like to live with, which is cool, isn't it? So that's a really cool thing. Let me just ask you a question that's popped up here, Brett. So Susan Fielding has asked, do you try and get a similar type of written format from individual schools to keep a continuity across the trust? And does each school have a website manager? So I think it's Sue. I think we know Sue, asking about the written format from individual schools. I'm not sure what you might be asking there, Sue, if you don't mind going into a bit more detail, but it might be about the type of the way the content's written, the formatting of content on the site, on the sites across the trust. Any thoughts on that, Brett?
I mean, a couple of the things what we try to insist upon, if you like, is that all schools put news on their websites and also blog as well, or at least got to the point where introducing blogging, and it's still evolving and it's still growing. But in terms of kind of the news feeds, we wanted to make sure that with every news feed there was at least one photo, so it wasn't just text. We obviously, in terms of the way that we developed our template, we made sure that actually the text type and the font and the size and the different heading types that allowed it to be consistent from one website to the next anyway. So in terms of the look and feel and the page design, it's very much consistently from one school to the next already. And then, like I said, when we try to kind of push the use of the website, we try to just make sure that people did it in a way where it continued that consistency.
Yeah, that's really helpful, actually. I mean, we always say, when we're launching something, we'd hopefully do all the heavy lifting in terms of transferring content and Ofsted audits and everything. And then really your sites are all there just for you to celebrate all the amazing stuff that goes on in school day to day, and there's stuff about news in terms of things that you've got to say. So particularly some, time like now, it's so important, and websites have become like right at the top of the tree from an information point of view. It's interesting, isn't it, that this idea of keeping stuff consistent is so important. And here's Sue again. There you go. The written style of news and content rather than the look. Yeah, there you go. So, and that's hard, isn't it? Because everybody's got their own style of writing. I don't know how you feel about that. I guess that's part. The trust site has got the trust identity in it. And I think maybe, see, I don't know what you think, Brett, the idea, the news and everything, yes, in terms of function, let's make sure it's got a photo and everything on it, but we want the school to have their own voice, I guess, do we?
Exactly that. Yeah. So one of the biggest things around kind of our individual website identity as well is that actually how people kind of communicate and kind of relay that information to their communities. It needs to be in their voice rather than the trust voice. In all honesty, that's not to say that, for example, with the current pandemic and things like that, we've obviously written things centrally, and then we've kind of said to all schools, this is the letter, or this is the content for that page, because at points there needs to be a consistent message, but certainly in terms of the day-to-day running, the information to parents, keeping people updated, we leave that to the schools to communicate in their style.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It does. Yeah, thanks, Sue. It's a brilliant question. It's good to see you. I'm going to come back to this one actually that we got right at the beginning. About the trust website itself. That's a thing, isn't it? What is the trust website for? And I know you and I have had some conversations about what we can do with school news and all sorts of stuff and things like that. But what's your impression? What's your idea of what the trust site is for before we get to how we're going to make it better?
Yeah, I suppose what we see it for is it's the window into the trust, first and foremost. Any prospective new schools, new academies, new parents wanting their kids to join one of our schools, whilst they will look at the individual school website, they'll also look at the trust website as well. So there's obviously the look and feel of it, the information that's on there, the personable touch in terms of who we are, what we do, meet the teams, things like that. We wanted to make sure that we got that information up there. We've got a bio around every member of the central team, just to give it that personable touch, really. There's obviously also the compliance aspect as well, what we're expected to put on there from the DFE, from the finance side of things as well. So we've got to make sure our annual accounts are up there and things like that. So yeah, there's the compliance angle, the governance angle that we've got to make sure that that's right. And then finally, we use it as a way to kind of bring together things that are happening in all our schools and celebrate that in a single location as well. So some of the admin team, they will look at what's happened in some of the other schools, and weekly they will kind of pull together some of the best stories, and they will put it on the trust website in the news sections. We do similar things with newsletters as well, half-term newsletters. Again, similar sort of things where we'll kind of bring together the best of the stories, and we'll do kind of a news sheet and put that up there.
It's nice.
So yeah, many angles what we would look at it from, but yeah, certainly celebrating what's going on in our schools, showing us off as a trust as in the best light, and making sure that we're compliant along the way, kind of the main three elements.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense to me. I think you're in a really good position as a trust in the schools. So a lot of us, I mean, we hopefully we're quite good at writing content and coming up with ideas for content and ideas of stuff, maybe what we've built and best practice and all that kind of stuff. It can be quite hard work sometimes because you think, what are you going to write about? But you, as a school, this is maybe something to just remember, folks, is just as a school, every day there's amazing stuff that goes on in school, and school websites can get a bit staid if you don't use them to celebrate life in school. Yeah. Trust websites can really easily, really quickly get even more staid because they are the corporate front, aren't they? But I think, yeah, I agree completely. If you can put things like your news and stuff on there and actually sell up you as a trust, what an amazing thing to be doing anyway, publicly celebrating all the brilliant stuff that go on in your schools that you're supporting as a trust is probably the best thing you do. And something else that you do really well, which is kind of outside, kind of call it in the periphery of your website, is what you do socially as well. So I think, Chief Exec posted something about very recently about what it's been brilliant to work with everybody in the schools while stuff's been really rough recently. So that kind of stuff is really important. you always say it's the content that we're talking about, making the trust website itself better. It's always about the content. It's not, you know, anybody and everybody who's half decent at website stuff should be able to make it so that your website looks nice, whether it's a trust or a school. I think where somebody hopefully would come into their own as a specialist should make it really easy for you to do all the stuff about celebrating all the fab stuff that goes on in school day to day. And I think that's just as true as a trust website as it is of a school website. I hope that's helpful. Is there if I know he asked you this question before we started talking, and said, well, so I'm going to ask you if there's anything that you would do differently, or any mistakes you would kind of correct, and said you're not allowed to say choose somebody else as the provider. Yeah, you're definitely not allowed to do that. But I have buttons that can make all sorts. So don't do that. But yeah, is there anything that you would maybe tweak, or that you would definitely do very different as part of the process?
I think I touched on one of the things earlier in terms of obviously the time scales that we look to implement this. We wanted it for September, fresh start, if you like, and we finalised the design and kind of the green light, if you like, mid to late July. So in terms of the turnaround, it was really fast. And obviously, if you could do it all again, you'd probably kind of just make everybody's workload a little bit less hectic by obviously looking at that. And I suppose the only thing which kind of ties in with that as well, which I probably maybe think about as well, is that you think that September is probably going to be the best start time, and that people over the summer, therefore, probably not looking at the websites as much, and a bit of downtime wouldn't hurt. But what you don't think about is actually people on holiday during that time as well. So getting the content from the schools, getting the approval from the schools, getting the sign off, if you like, it just added to the stress a little bit. So
yeah, we find that normally in a project, Brett, actually, is if a school comes on board, let's say end of June, beginning of July, and we're working through the process, and we get to the second, third week of July, and we ask questions, we'll be quite bombed with stuff then. And then folks will disappear. Fair enough, you know, but folks will disappear for a good few weeks and then reappear. And we haven't had answers to some of the questions we need asking. And and when you've times that by 29, 30, then, you know, it does add to the stress slightly, doesn't it? But
it certainly does. And that's certainly something which, yeah, if you're doing it again, I'd maybe think, do we stagger it? Do we do it at a different time? But yeah, other than that, I can't pinpoint anything really what went wrong, if you like. I don't think there were anything where I would say there were a fundamental issue. Nothing which weren't resolved just over a quick phone call. If something weren't working correctly, phone call and it was sorted. If something didn't quite look right, again, phone call, and then the design template was changed across the board. So yeah, there's nothing really which I would fundamentally say we got this wrong. And yeah, if I were doing it again, this is how we would do it, other than maybe the timing.
Yeah, that's good. That's helpful, isn't it? Mm. Yeah. So in terms of, just finally, and then we'll wrap up. It's been so helpful. What difference can you see now you've made that change? Are there tangible benefits across the trust? So I mean, I'm thinking about operationally in terms of management stuff. I guess cash is obviously part of the conversation as well. Is there anything? Is there other stuff, or is any comments on either of those?
Yeah, so I mean, certainly from a financial aspect, obviously you've got economies of scale with any procurement exercise, and we certainly saw this when we did this procurement as well. As you can imagine, each school going out individually and buying the website is going to be a lot more expensive than us going and procuring 30 on their behalf. Mm. Certainly from a financial aspect, it gave us the benefits not only from the best value aspect. Not only does it give you the benefits from the finance side of things, but actually the scale that we could change things, the actual additional extras that we could wrap into it, the wraparound services. So we were able to add in other things as well, like the training, things like that, because usually people go out and procure something and then it's an afterthought. So what do I need to do to consistently update it? We were able to package that into a single plan, which still came in on budget. So certainly from best value and finance, that's certainly a big difference what we've seen. But from our perspective, there's obviously other things as well. The quality of the websites now, the consistency and look and feel, professionalism, corporateness, whatever words you want to describe for kind of how they look and how they come across, was one of our biggest drivers. And we've been really pleased with how they look. And one of the things I've not mentioned earlier in terms of one of the reasons why we pushed this as well was what we do as a trust is any schools that are in the Ofsted window, if you like, myself and other members of the central team work closer with them to kind of make sure that everything's polished, if you like. And one of the things obviously that we look at is the website as well. And one of the biggest headaches for myself going into those schools to support them was, where do I find things? Where have you put this? Where have you put that? Having things done 10 or 12 different ways, because we may have had that many different providers. So from my perspective, like I said, going in there and saying, actually, we will have an important information menu item, which is consistent in every school. We know that when we look at the Ofsted guidance and the DFE guidance for what needs to be published, everything's in that one location. And from that perspective, it just made life so much easier when, like I said, supporting the schools and just making them final tweaks in readiness for any inspection. So that was one of the biggest drivers as well, and certainly one of the biggest differences what we've seen from a selfish point of view in terms of my workload. But I'm sure from the school's perspective as well, for them continually updating and changing the things, it just makes it easier to know where things are and when. We have some staff that kind of maybe work across multiple schools as well. So being able to go into different schools and just pick it up, teachers that blog from one school to the next. It's not a case of, well, how do I blog in that school compared with how do I blog in this school? And you've got that consistency.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, isn't it? That's really good. And you guys were the driver behind some of the features within the software as well, you know, like being able to share document groups so that you can drop policy content on multiple sites and all that kind of stuff. You know, you guys were the driver on some of those things as well. So that's amazing. Brett, thanks so much. I honestly can't thank you enough. That's been really helpful for certainly for me, just to get an idea of how you approached that. You know, a year or so ago now, isn't it? But also, I think that would be really helpful to get your perspective on how somebody who might be thinking about this would approach it at the moment. So, yeah, thanks so much for that. Is there any final thoughts on anything? You said all you need to say.
No, I think I've covered everything. Like I said, one of the key things is just don't let the barriers put you off. There's always barriers in any process. Just believe in it really, and obviously working with somebody like Shudio and like Ian and his team is just adds to the benefits that you get from it as well. And we're really happy with the way things are.
Brilliant. Thanks, Brett. Really appreciate it, honestly. Yeah, you guys are brilliant to work with. So, yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for watching this. You know where we are if you've got any questions. I'll wrap up now. But, of course, if you are joining us on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe. We're adding more content all the time. We're trying to do more and more live streams. So, hopefully that's going to be helpful. So, if you do hit the subscribe button somewhere underneath, you'll get notified when we're going to be doing some more stuff like that. So, yeah, thanks so much. But, Brett, thank you. Honestly, that was really great to chat to you, and I'm really grateful. And we'll catch up soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot.